All right. Good morning. Good morning. Happy Sunday. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining me in the session. As always, I am so honored to be here with you in this time of sensitivity and uncertainty. And I look forward, as I always do, to sharing time with you in our shared sacred space today. So the thing we'll do today in our time together in sacred space is actually, before we enter into sacred space, I've got a couple of housekeeping items, announcements to make for folks. Then we'll set sacred space, and then we'll talk about our topic for the session, which this month will be coming to peace with your inner demons. Coming to peace with your inner demons. It's a story Gary has selected and will read for us, and then we'll kind of dive into our brainstorm kind of discussion from there. Then we'll have an exercise. There might be a poem that I think I might want to read for this, and then we'll close sacred space. Okay. So let me just make sure we're live and streaming. Okay, we're looking good. So the quick housekeeping item is that just a quick announcement. We had talked about a retreat happening in Greece the first week of October 2nd to the 9th. That retreat now is sold out. All the spots are taken. But in the process of doing all the logistics, the second announcement is that if you are still interested in doing a retreat, this is a week-long retreat, we are in the process of scheming to commandeer the same villa we're going to be at during that week for the week right before as well. For the rest of the year, this is the only other free week that this villa, it's this incredible space about 45 minutes north of Athens. And I've kind of worked out a rough handshake deal with the head manager, butler there, to try and take the villa the week before as well. So September 24th to October 1st. And so what we're going to be doing, I think, is we will be offering the exact same retreat, everything the same, the events, the content, everything, just duplicated also the week before. So October 2nd to the 9th, done, sold out, all the spots are taken. September 24th to October 1st is the additional week we're going to be opening, 90% certain we're going to be opening it. So if you would like to do a retreat that last week of September, please email me, DM me immediately. And we'll see if we can set it up. I'm just going to pop the link here. Where am I in Facebook? Where am I in Facebook? Okay. And that's the information page for the retreat. The dates say 2nd to the 9th, but that's sold out. We're talking about September 24th to October 1st. The online 3-month intensive version of the retreat we started last week. We had our first check-in session with Gary just yesterday. So that's technically closed, but we will do a second round in the fall starting in November. And for people who are like, you know, I need that support this summer, shoot me an email. We're doing replays of the main sessions. So if it's something you would like to potentially slow jump into, there's probably 2 spots left open if we massage things a little bit, but just let me know. Okay. So those are the quick housekeeping items. Lots of cool stuff going on this summer, and just thank you everyone here in Sacred Space. And if you've been involved with other things we do here across the board, just thank you so much for your support in helping us continue to do this work in our lives, in our bliss, and in the world. Okay. So with those housekeeping items out of the way, I will now start the process of setting our sacred space together. And to start the process, I'll just say that our intention from this point forward in our time together is to now create and make a space together which is devoid of fear, threat, and control. Okay. So no pitches, no admonishments, no you better do this because it's good for you. All of that falls away for this time period we're about to share together for a purpose. Right? I mean, it's relaxing, it's great, but also for the purpose of allowing us, only if we want, to be able to open to higher guidance from within our own selves. However you define that. It could be a muse that you feel like you take guidance from. It could be intuition, instinct, hairs on the back of your neck, brilliant flashes of insight that you get when you're in the shower or on a long run. However you define that. A safe sanctuary space for us all to be able to relax and surrender with no feeling of danger or threat from other people, certainly, but also ideally, also not from our own inner selves, where we don't, in sacred space especially, threaten ourselves, right? With, well, I better do this, or I'm not going to be a good whatever person, or conscious being, or my vibration won't be high enough. So no threat, even internally. So that in doing this, we can then, all of us together, partake of the nourishment, the emotional nourishment, and the spiritual nourishment that comes from being in sacred space together as a group. And in opening sacred space today, I will propose that we all follow the 4 principles of Presidian sacred space. Number 1, confidentiality, standard Vegas rules. What happens in sacred space stays in sacred space. Now we're online, the stream is public, the replay will be public. So the way we handle confidentiality in the online channel is via anonymization. So if you would like to be anonymous, you don't have to be anonymous, but if you would like to be anonymous, you would come in to the Crowdcast stream, you would log in, and then you would go into your edit profile feature, change your username to Harry Potter, Mickey Mouse, whatever you like, and then come back in and continue chatting, asking questions, whatever you'd like to do. Number 2, the second principle, is that as much as possible, to the best of our ability, right? This is a best efforts kind of thing. We do not give anyone else in the group, and even ourselves, ideally, any feeling of threat or fear or controlling, right? Now, certainly that covers like hostile kind of expressions, but also it covers well-meaning expressions. So even if it's like, I'm trying to fix you, I'm trying to do an intervention, I'm giving you tough love, this will hurt me more than it hurts you, but it's good for you. We don't even do that. Right? We're not saying that's bad. There is a time and place for that. But because it is of the provenance of fear, threat, and control, for your own good, but still fear, threat, and control, we don't do that in sacred space because the very nature of the act completely evaporates the sacred space, right? And there are certain things can only get done when you're in sacred space. So it's like going to the bank, right? It's like, I'm not saying being in the parking lot is bad, but I'm not going to count out all this cash in the parking lot. I need to go to the bank where it's protected to get things done in the bank that I can only do in the bank, right? But I don't need to live in the bank, right? I can go there for a certain period of time, get my stuff done, and then go into other spaces. So here, we're going into sacred space for the next hour or 2. No threat, no controlling, no fixing, no tough love, so that we can get our stuff done in sacred space. We are holding space for each other to be however we are. If you're afraid, we just sit there, hold space for you to be afraid. If you're anxious, same. If you're happy, relax. We don't say, well, look at the state of the world. How could you be happy and relaxed? We don't do any of that. We don't control, we don't fix. We just hold space for you however you are. Even if you say, oh, this is a judgment-free, I will withhold judging you while we're in this space. it's kind of funny, you know, we kind of don't even say that because it's like in this space, I have no power to judge you. So there's nothing even to hold. There is no judgment. And again, ideally, you do this not only for other people, but you also do this for yourself, right? You even give yourself a break. You declare amnesty on self-criticism for the next 2 hours. Even longer, ideally, but one step at a time, and however you are, we hold space for that. And you can practice holding space for that in yourself as well. Okay, so the third principle is no commerce, right? Which is why I was careful to do my little housekeeping updates before we started entering into sacred space. Nothing may be sold or recommended or suggested, right? We are here for your energy, not for the things you bring. We are here for what you are, not for what you do or provide. This includes recommendations as well, because any kind of pitch or recommendation, even if I'm not going to benefit financially or reputationally from it, even if I recommend a book for the thing that you say, you have a backache, and I say you should read this book, it fixed my back. Even that has a tinge of threat to it, well-meaning, still threat. Words, if you don't read this book, right, you will maybe not get your pain relief. So there's fear there. So you're like, you rush out and get the book. It's all well-meaning. You're happy to pay for the book. You get a lot of good value. But it's still a threat. So we don't do that here in sacred space. And actually, as we enter into sacred space, I will just say the retreats and everything I mentioned before we stepped into sacred space. That's just an FYI. We're sold out and we're opening another. And I will make it a point to say, if you don't end up going to the retreat, if you end up never doing any retreat with me, never any programs, you never spend a dollar or a euro with me, there is no consequence, or there is no threat. You don't need to do stuff with me for anything. And if you don't do stuff with me, it's not like, oh, you're going to lose out. It's like, if you don't feel moved to walk down the path with me on some of this stuff, I am highly confident that another path, as good or even better, will present itself to you in your life. Right? So there is no, even when I'm pitching, there is no threat, because that's, it's kind of what I teach, right? So, so yeah. So even before sacred space, if you can't make the retreat, the schedules don't work, don't worry. Everything will be okay. It will be, loads of fun, but there is no threat of actually, anything bad you're going to miss out on, right? And the fourth principle is no expectation of participation. Right? So there's no pressure to do anything. You can stay or not stay in sacred space. You can invite your friends, not invite your friends. You can ask questions, chat or not. You can sign up for a retreat or program with me or not, right? Again, the nourishment in sacred space especially comes from the held space, and presence and attention, from what you are, not from what you do or provide. And certainly you can hold sacred space for yourself on your own, which is very powerful as well. Meditation, reflection, contemplation, showers, long runs, walks in nature, right? But when we do sacred space together as a group, all of us together, it's like a potluck. All of us together tend to amplify the effect. And all of this nourishment is generated more than any one of us could ever consume, in 3 lifetimes, right? And it's just this feeling of abundance. So yeah, that's what I'm proposing we do for the next hour or 2. So this is my proposal. And if you are not okay with it, no problem, right? But we are about to cross the threshold into our shared sacred space here. So if this is not the plane you want to be on, we will pause here to give everyone a moment to make their selection. And if, as you feel so moved, to withdraw from the group. And again, there's no fear, threat, and control to make you come to the group or stay in the group. Come and go as you please. If you're not feeling it and you want to leave today, totally fine. We'll still catch up with you later. In profane space, we'll still be allies, friends. We'll hang out. if you're on my email list, I'm still going to email you. So no worries at all. So I'm just going to take a small pause here to allow everyone to make their selection on whether they would like to stay or not. And you can come and go anytime during the session as well. Okay. Okay, and now that we've got that dialed in, for those of us who are here now, we will now move together into our shared sacred space. And as we cross the threshold now into our shared sacred space, I will just remind everyone, including myself, of the 4 principles of proceeding in sacred space: confidentiality / anonymization, no fear, threat, or control, no fixing, no intervention, no tough love, no commerce, no suggestions, no recommendations, and no expectation of participation. Welcome back. Welcome back to our shared sacred space. Hope everyone had a good month. And it's just so good to be back here with everyone today. So our topic for this session will be coming to peace with your inner demons, coming to peace with your inner demons. In this month's session, Gowrie found a folk tale from India that led us into a reflection of the different realms we have within us in our own inner selves, and also into reflection on the way we seek nourishment from inside and the nature of our inner demons. So there's a lot to unpack here, but let me start by inviting Gowrie on screen to tell us about the story and also to read the story to us, my favorite part of Sacred Space. Hi, Gowrie.
Hi, Artie. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Hi.
I can hear and see you perfectly. Welcome back.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us.
Yeah, so it's a familiar story this time, but from a tradition that I didn't expect. So it's a folktale from India, but we've done this kind of story before, and I'm starting to see a pattern where we do the same kind of story from different traditions, but with slight variations.
Patterns come up.
Yeah.
Yeah. After what? We're on our 75th session now. A pattern is starting to emerge. Good. Yeah. Good.
Yeah. Okay. So would you like me to
tell us? I would love that. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. So this story is from folktale, like a village folktale tradition from the northeastern part of India, but it's the kind of story that friends tell each other, or you're sitting around a campfire and you tell each other these kind of stories. So the story goes that once upon a time there were 2 very close friends, and they regularly visited each other at each other's house, had tea together. And on one of these occasions, when one friend had come over and he had stayed very late at his friend's house, they had a dinner together and they were talking, and the guest said, well, how about we go fishing tomorrow before dawn? Let's get up early and do this. And the host said, all right, let's do that, but it's already late, so whoever rises early in the morning will go to the other person's house, wake him up, and then go down to the river. So let's do it that way. And as they were discussing these plans, they didn't know this, but there was a ghost listening to this conversation in the backyard. And this ghost was grinning to himself because, he saw a plan coming to his mind and he was going to trap one of them. And so when the guest left for his house after the meal, this ghost followed him to his house and he waited. And when it was late in the middle of the night, when this man was sleeping, the ghost started knocking at the door. And so naturally, you know, he was asleep, this man, and he suddenly woke up at the sound of the door knocks, and he thought it was probably time to wake up and go down to the river. So he called out and said, "Who is it? My friend, is that you?" And the voice that came back at him was, "Yes, it's me. Come, let's go fishing." And this was the ghost, right? Pretending to be this young man's friend. And so the young man woke up, took his fishing equipment, you know, came out rubbing his eyes, and it was still quite dark. And then, you know, they started walking towards the river. And once they reached the river, you know, what they did is they found a spot in the stream, like a narrow spot, where they could build short, like blockage dam kind of things, and they stopped the water on both sides, right? So the amount of water that collected in the middle was very shallow, and with the help of buckets, that they then drained the water that was caught between the two dams, and then all the fish that came in the buckets, they were just exposed because the water was already shallow and it was drying up because they were just pouring out water from the buckets. Now, all the fish were just lying there exposed and drying up. And so the young man was catching all this fish in the bucket itself and putting them in the fishing basket. So there were like piles and piles of fish. And then he turns around and he saw his friend was picking fish from the fish basket and was eating them raw. And now the young man became suspicious that, is this really my friend? Or is this an evil spirit disguised as my friend? And so he decided that he needed to do something. And he called out and said, hey, I need to go into the bushes. I need to answer nature's call. I have to relieve myself. So I'm just going to be away for a few minutes. And when he said this, the ghost became suspicious. So he said, all right, now here's a rope, right? He took out a rope and he said, tie one end of the rope around your waist. I don't want you going into the bushes in the dark, and, I want to make sure you're safe. So tie this around your waist and I'll be holding the other end of the rope. And so the young man did as the ghost told him, tied the rope around his waist and walked into a nearby bush. And then as soon as he was sure that he was out of sight, he untied the rope, tied it there to a twig, and then he stealthily started walking back home. And it was a long time, and the ghost waited, and the young man didn't come out of the bushes. And the ghost started wondering, what is taking so long? Where's the young man? And so he pulled the rope. And something told him that everything wasn't okay. So he called out, and there was no response. And so he went looking for the man. And seeing the other end of the rope right there, he became very angry. And he started running after this young man because he knew that he must be heading home. So he just ran in the direction of his house. And the young man was just only halfway to his house when all of this happened. And he saw the ghost coming after him. And he knew that he cannot outrun an evil spirit. So he decided to turn around and face him like a man. And the ghost came at him, and the two wrestled with one another. And sometimes, the ghost was on top, sometimes the young man was on top. They were rolling all over each other. And the young man was getting tired, but he did not give up. And time passed in this way, and dawn came at last. And as the sunlight started to fill the sky, the ghost became weaker and weaker, but the fight still went on. Right? And the young man started calling out for help when he saw it was almost There was time for sunrise. He started calling for help, hoping someone would hear him. And meanwhile, his friend, right, the other guy, he had woken up. He had gone to his friend's house, knocked on the door, found that the door was locked, and he walked in the direction of the river. And he heard his friend calling, and he started running towards the voice. And then there were other villagers who had heard, cries for help, and they started running there too. And they all came and saw what's happening. They caught the ghost, and then they chained the ghost and burned him alive. Right? And, all the villagers were very proud of how this brave young man and did this, and they finally got rid of the ghost. And then the two friends came back home. And from that day, they decided never to go fishing before dawn. So that's the story. Artie, would you like to come back up?
Thank you.
Hi.
Still upsetting second time around.
I know. I remember you were like, when I told you the story, is like, I don't like the story.
Okay, but I'm jumping ahead. Let me start with my usual question, which is, first of all, thank you for reading the story again. Where do you enter into this story?
Right. So a couple of things. When I first read the story, again, it was surprisingly familiar in some parts. And I remember that we've done something similar before, which is, we've done the story Devil's Bridge, and I'll put a link up to that. So Devil's Bridge is this Welsh story that we brought in, and it was about how this old woman outwitted the devil who was trying to make a bargain with her, for helping her across the river and, get her cow back, right? And the whole thing over there is how the devil was trying to get her and trap her, and how she was kind of planning and making a kind of plan to escape from it. So finally she succeeds in outwitting the devil. So that was the story. And the theme seemed very similar to me here. I mean, this ghost makes a plan to trap one of the friends, and how the friend kind of escapes. But the other thing that also struck me is, because this is a story from the Indian folktale tradition, I can speak to some of, the cultural aspects of this. Ghost stories typically, here when I was growing up, and how we tell these stories to each other, there's a great tradition of telling stories, not these days so much with mobile phones and things like that to keep us distracted, but when people got together and they kind of sat around in the living room, or sometimes late evenings when they just sat outdoors and chatting with each other. And as the night grew darker and darker, invariably conversations go to, like, who's got a juicy ghost story to tell, right?
Right.
And that's how it starts, and people start telling stories. Sometimes they're like these folk tales, but sometimes, most of the times, they are personal accounts of personal encounters with ghosts. And no one really questions how true they are, right? Because it's not the right thing to do. It's not really the proper thing to say. So they are taken in good faith that it's a true story, this happened to someone, and they would then go on to narrate like how they encountered this ghost and what happened. And they're invariably of a flavor where someone goes into a haunted place quite knowingly, or sometimes unknowingly, and then certain things happen to tell them that there is a ghost there. And I
just want to interject one quick thing, which is many of you who are with us. They have been with us for like 2.5 years, right through pandemic and everything. I just want to say, every story someone tells is true.
Yeah.
It may not be factually true, but when your kid or your spouse or your friend, your brother-in-law, walks in and starts telling you this story about like, oh, I ran into the dentist and he said this and I said that. It's like you can read that mythopoetically as well. It's no different. What someone chooses to tell you or talk about or gossip about, you could read mythopoetically equivalently as if they told you the dream they had last night. And in the space of that story of like, oh, the landlord did this and then the cop showed up, and then their entire inner world is completely there on the X-ray film. And those of you who have been with us for a while, you've kind of developed some chops and instincts and pattern recognition for some of this stuff. I know for a fact, right? And you can, only if you want, look at the story people tell you with a mythopoetic lens and use the insight that you gain from that for good only, please, not for evil. But you have a superpower X-ray vision now. So yeah, so I just wanted to share that with everyone in case you're wondering, like, am I gaining any superpowers from spending all this time with Carrie and Artie? It's like, yeah, I would wager that you are. I don't know how useful superpower is, but that's to decide. Sorry, please continue.
Yeah, so I mean, I am looking at these memories of all of these ghost story narrations from that view now, where it's interesting how people would commonly tell stories of ghost encounters, and the theme across those stories would normally be how they escaped unscathed, and how it was like the coolest experience they had. And looking at that, the set of memories that I have around ghost story, narrating experiences, and I come across this story. This is not a typical ghost story, like an Indian folktale. And that's the other thing that kind of made me go, that's interesting, because.
Wait, why is it not typical?
Because in the theme where we're looking at a person having a ghost encounter and coming out of it unscathed, right? As they put it, yes, it still fits the same theme, but the thing about it is the ghost gets burned alive in this one, and this is the first ever time I've come across that. So that was kind of like, whoa, I've never come across a story that tells that bit. It's usually like, you just escape and you're a hero for having come out of the haunted house alive and to tell the story. That's the kind of feeling. So that was intriguing for me. And because it was also familiar from the Devil's Bridge story perspective. And by now I've come to realize that every time I stumble across a familiar story in a different tradition or a different kind of theme with a variation, it's a call to circumambulate. It's like, okay, we're going over this once again for some reason. So let's do this. I had this huge thing that used to keep coming at me. There's this internal, I won't call it fear, but there was a certain hesitation, an expectation that I had set on myself that every story has to bring something new to the table because, it's something, it's on me to offer as much variety as possible, So, I mean, no one had put that expectation on me. That was completely on me.
Yeah, definitely not me. I'm happy reading the Greek pantheon all day long.
I know.
Yeah.
And you've said it's fine if we do the same thing, but I had this expectation on myself, and I started noticing it. And I said, all right, let's drop this expectation and what comes up. And then I would see that all these familiar stories just keep repeating. I think we've done at least like minimum of three or four stories on the same theme over and over again.
Seemingly.
Right? Very, very similar sounding. There's almost like you can compare them like to like, and they're almost similar from different traditions. And now I'm starting to see that every time that kind of story comes up for me, it's a call to circumambulate. Like, let's go over this one more time and see what new thing comes up.
So there is something I should say about, like a finer point on the nature of circumambulation. I think in the retreats and the online things that we've been doing recently, I've heard a bit of tone around when people are talking about circumambulation, and they're like, well, you know, I guess I need to see this lesson again. I guess I haven't gotten it yet, right? And I challenge that. I resist that tone of interpretation, because strictly speaking, when we talk about circumambulation, you go over a similar theme. Like, you have yet another relationship where this particular pattern plays out. Okay? And of course, in the middle of the relationship, you're just, you know, riding high, right? But then afterwards, you look back and you're like, oh my gosh, I did the same thing again. The same thing happened again. And what could be forgiven for thinking, well, I guess I haven't learned my lesson. I have to keep going through the tumbler until I finally get it through my thick skull. But that's not quite how it works. Because the point of circumambulation is that you're not going in circles, you're going in more of a spiral. You're walking around the problem. And when you walk around the problem, or the core of yourself, again, every time you walk through, you see something you didn't see before, you think something you haven't thought before, you feel something you haven't felt before. Even when you watch movies you love, you watch them like the 10th time, oh, I didn't realize this. These two characters, but there was a subtext going on. It's mind-blowing, right? And so one of the classic kind of like descriptions of circumambulation is like therapists will say, you know, when they have their patients in therapy, or even, you know, if you're best friends with someone, something will happen, and your friend, if you allow them to, will tell the same damn story over and over and over. It's like a nervous tick. It's like, okay, yeah, you already told me that, right? If you're like a normal friend, if you're a really good friend, almost too good, you will hold space for them and let them say the 10th time. But what you'll notice, if you have been this person yourself, when you keep telling the story over and over, like you're apologizing, I'm sorry, I've already said this, but you still feel compelled to say the whole damn thing again.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'm weak, I'm just going in circles, I'm stupid. No. If you're listening carefully, i.e. holding space for yourself, i.e. holding, dare I say, sacred space for yourself, right? Allowing yourself to tell the story the 10th time to yourself and just listening, you will notice that every time you tell the story changes a little bit. It refines a little bit. What sounded like the same story the first time you told it. Oh, you know, this person broke my heart, and why do I always have people like this? I'm always falling for this kind of person and getting taken, and you know, this after this breakup or whatever. And then when you get to the 10th time, it sounds like they're talking about the same breakup, and they technically are. But by the 10th time, over the course of, you know, a month or, you know, an hour, you'll notice that the story will change. But which is the 10th, by the 10th time, they're not saying, oh, why am I always being, you know, cheated and deceived by these kind of partners. It's often the center of gravity has moved inward, where it's like, what is it going on with me that I end up you know, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me, right? That kind of attitude where it's like, yeah, this is the fifth relationship where the same thing has happened. It's like, maybe it's something going on with me, and I'm just curious about that. And I'm not blaming myself. I'm just like, yeah, what's going on? Like a light bulb goes off. And that doesn't happen till, like, metaphorically speaking, the 10th retelling of the story. So, like, going over it is not stupidity or weakness. It's like polishing a mirror. Every time you go over it, the mirror gets clearer and clearer. And in my experience, not only is that okay and tolerable, it's the only way to get the mirror cleaned. Like, there is no, like, this circular, ambulatory, seemingly windy, crisscrossy path is actually the shortest, most efficient path.
Yeah.
Right? The most efficient path is not linear. Like, look at nature. Nature is, like, perfectly efficient. And everything in nature is curvy, spirally, circumambulatory. Right? Your small intestine, there's like 6 feet or something like that of small intestine between the 2 feet between your stomach and your backside. Yeah. And if it did a straight line, not the circumambulatory route, you wouldn't be able to live. There's not enough surface area in the 2 feet for your body to be able to extract all the nutrients from the lunch you just ate. Right? It needs the 6 feet. So it takes this seemingly very inefficient, from patriarchal Western linearized perspective. It seems inefficient, but it's not. Right? It's perfectly efficient. And you can see that if you hold sacred space for it and stop threatening it and criticizing it. So anyway, said another way, and this goes to the theme of our story today, circumambulation is not something certainly to be scorned, certainly not to be burned alive, but also circumambulation is not something to merely be tolerated because, what is it, Thursday, I'm in a good mood, I'll let you go this time. But rather, circumambulation is something to be embraced, to be run toward and embraced lovingly. And it's like, yippee, let's do this right again. And I'll try and take even better notes this time. Okay, so Gary has left me, so I guess I should go into my notes for the story. So for this story, this fishing ghost in the forest story, when Gary read it, I did not like this story, right? And then I thought, okay, muse, I'm letting Gary just kind of lead, I'll just roll with it. And I thought maybe this will be a new kind of story format for me, where I'm actually arguing with the stories, right? Because for me, the feeling of the story, I know we've had these ghost kind of Devil's Bridge type stories before, but this time around, this circumambulation around, there is another kind of principle that emerges, for me certainly, that we haven't really talked about before. And that is the tension between two classic archetypal realms of life, right? Traditionally thought of as the realm of the village versus the realm of the forest. Village versus forest. Okay. You have this archetypal dichotomy and tension in all, across all, world civilizations, in multiple indigenous traditions, certainly Native American First Nations traditions, across Northern Europe, Grimm Brothers, Grimm Tales, and Asia, South Asia, East Asia, where the boundary of the village, the boundary line of the village, mythopoetically, and in ancient times, quite literally and physically, defines the boundary point between the world of order and the world of chaos, right? Out beyond the horizon, there be monsters here and dragons, right? The ancient maps, past a certain point, like we just don't know what, and we fall off the edge of the earth for all we know, right? From the Celtic / English mythic tradition, and literal tradition comes the phrase "beyond the pale," right? And the pale was this boundary line between the civilized English world and the barbaric, world of right, the Scots and the Picts and and everyone else. So you never wanted to go beyond the pale. And now when we say beyond the pale, we say, well, that's beyond the pale. That's beyond the realm of the known, the fashionable, and the acceptable. The word ambition. Now, of course, that is from the perspective of the civilized, conquering English world, not from the perspective, right, of the world that's actually beyond the pale. If you're of the world beyond the pale, like that is civilization to you, and these are invaders coming in to crush you, right? The word ambition itself comes from the word ambit, which is related to the outer boundary of the. Hopefully, everyone can still hear me. Y'all can still hear me? And for when Gary had that issue before, she did a refresh of the browser, and that brought it back. Sorry if we're having issues. So the word ambition comes from the word ambit, which is related to the ambit of the village, which is the boundary of the village. So if you are ambitious, right, you go right to the edge of the ambit, and you push against it, and perhaps even go beyond the ambit, and go beyond the pale. Now, I didn't know this about ambition and ambit, the sort of etymology of it, for a long time. There's a word in Chinese which is equivalent to the word ambition. And the word ambitious in Chinese is ye xing. Xing is heart or your mind, and ye is wild and untamed, right? So if you're ambitious, they say, oh, that person is really ye xing, right? They really have an untamed heart. They really have a wild, barbaric, undisciplined heart, and they go out and they're always going beyond the pale and all these things. And I always rolled my eyes at that. As a Chinese American, I was like, well, that's traditional Chinese culture. They want to keep you in. They want to keep you hemmed and tamed. And then I learned the word origin of the word ambitious, and I realized the Western world has the same concepts embedded in it. Right? The village versus the forest is the same everywhere. It is an archetype of the human experience, and that's okay. Right? There are traditions, like the Hindu tradition, actually, where the forest and the village are integrated in a very, very sort of beautiful, holistic way. And we've talked about this in our past sessions on the phases of life, right? But in the Hindu system, there's, let's call it 4 phases of life. And the first 2 are lived in the village. The student phase, where you learn what you're supposed to do, the householder phase, where you marry, you do your career, and you produce your offspring to replace yourself, right, to keep civilization going. And then the third phase, you wander from the village into the forest to do different things, to go back to nature, to seek enlightenment. And then there's another phase after that where you go even, it's like the first phase, you go to Everest base camp, and then the 4th phase, you leave base camp itself into more fully the wild. So they're not necessarily at odds. There are versions of the world and conceptions of the nature of reality and the cycle of human life where they are quite beautifully integrated, right? And for me, just to jump ahead a little bit, the ultimate integration between forest and village is that when you realize this, you not transcend, but you kind of take this higher, slightly higher view, and you're like, both of these realms are me and mine. And as soon as I realized this, I claimed them. I claimed them. Right? The basement of my house may have been scary to me as a boy, but now as a man and the owner of my house, it may still be dark and scary down there, but it's my basement. right? I go down there, come up and down between the upper and lower worlds as I please, as I feel so moved, as I need to. And I do not fear either realm within myself. A house being a sort of a metaphor for my inner self. And I go everywhere. I claim myself. I own myself. So here then, with the story, we have a story that touches on the tension and I would say the tragedy of the two realms, right? And to me, now every storyteller, every narrative teller has a bias. I'm biased. I'm not objective. And this folktale is also not objective and biased. And it is biased, right? This is a folktale that has survived first in oral form and then survived so far as to be put down into writing, which means this is a tale told from the perspective of civilization, from the perspective of the village, right? This is a tale that we tell to children in the village. This is not a tale that the ghosts tell each other in the forest. Okay. So in the narrative of village versus forest, this is village side propaganda, right? So that's my sort of setup here. And that's how I read this story with somewhat of a critical eye. Because I love both realms, right? For me, I am equally of the village and of the forest. And maybe it's my fate of life or whatever, where I'm more moving into the forest, but I love both realms. So with this story, these two lads, these boys, I'm careful to call them boys and not men because they have not, gotten to the point where they understand the nature of the forest clearly. And they're close. And to me, this is a symbol of, let's just say, the strengthened bonds within the village. And by the way, as we're reading this story mythopoetically, which means that we regard every major actor in the story as being a different part of your own inner self. So each of the boys is you. The village is you. The forest is you. And this so-called evil spirit is you. The river is you and the fishery. Okay. And so there are other clues as well. Right? On this fishing journey, right? This quote-unquote fishing journey, why do they have to go outside the village? But I'm sure the stream runs through the village as well. I'm sure there's like streams that are closer and not as deep into the deep, dark forest. Why do they go fishing beyond the pale? And why do they do so before dawn? Right, so there's almost like village versus forest, daytime versus nighttime, right? Waking time versus dream time. And very specifically, these boys are going outside the village, beyond the pale, and before we return to the time of daylight, during basically dream time. So the forest or jungle, mythopoetically, across all these world traditions, and Snow White and Seven Dwarfs are all deep in the forest. The forest is a symbol of the unexplored regions of your own inner self. These ghosts come from that place. Frogs, like in The Princess and the Frog, can go down into the underworld, dark realm, night realm of the well to retrieve your full self, your golden ball, come from that place. Right? So the general rule is, if you want super life-changing transformation and insight, if you want the gold, you're not going to get it in the village. There's no gold in the village. You have to go into the forest. Right? By definition, categorically, there is no gold in the village. There is security, comfort, constraint, and familiarity. Therefore, no gold. Right? And if you're like, well, do I have to pick village or forest, one or the other? And my answer is no. You don't have to pick between your attic and your basement. Both are a part of you. You just, if you want, need to learn how to be familiar with all these realms. And then you get to know the full power of your own house, right? That you paid for, and that is yours. And so the friends come up with a plan to go fishing. Fishing, as we know from past stories, is a symbol of insight, right? Water or the ocean is a symbol of insight. And when the fish come up, either the whale comes up and takes Jonah down, Jonah and the whale down into a cycle of transformation. These fish are a symbol of insight. In the Arthurian sort of Celtic mythic cycle, one story I use a lot in private session is the Fisher King. So this king is wounded. He's wounded so badly that even the Holy Grail can't heal him. And without getting too much into that story, the only thing that gives him some pain relief is to be carried out on a stretcher onto a rowboat. The boatman sort of rows him up into the center of the moat that surrounds the castle. And the Fisher King fishes all day, and he pulls up fish and salmon, right? And salmon of wisdom. There's a whole Celtic tradition of the salmon. They eat the chestnuts that fall from the magical tree, and they grow wise, and you eat the salmon. Most of the time, you will gain their wisdom. If you eat the salmon too soon, you will. That's in one version of the story. That's how the Fisher King gets his wound of basically castration. There is no generativity. There is no reproduction. There is no creativity. In the scripture, in the sacred text of this Fisher King story, the text actually has describes this wounded Fisher King as too ill to live and yet unable to die. I will tell you, when I have told this story in a teaching environment to executives at major medical, global, world-class institutions, in rooms full of like CEOs and C-class people, people will come up to me after they have wept silent tears in the middle of the corporate retreat, and they have said, "You just described my life, my midlife crisis. Basically, I feel like I'm in a place where I am too ill to live and yet unable to die." The phrase is not accidental. Even in the year 1195, around the year 1200, right? What is that? 820 years ago. They were speaking about just this exact thing, because the cycles of human life have not changed much in 800 years. They've accelerated somewhat because of technology, but the phases are still the same. We still need the same support, and we still have trouble getting it. And so, look at the time here, see if I want to get into this. So fish and going to get fish is a symbol of going in to get insight. And that, to me, is why they have to go into the forest, because there's no gold in the village, right? So the real fish they're looking for are deep in the forest. And the real fish that they want to get are not going to be caught in the middle of noon sunlight. The fish that they want, they're only going to get before dawn. Okay. And so it's very telling, and to me, very moving, that these boys, it's almost like they're on the cusp of initiation, right? They've gone fishing before, they've done this stuff before, but they're sitting around talking, and they're literally, to me, saying, it's time we did this, right? I'm said another way, it's time we transformed into men and got on with this next phase of life, which means we need to start going out into the forest and finding insight from the deeper regions of our own unexplored self. This is the crux of initiation. And so the boys want to go fishing at dawn. And this, again, this is a story told by the village perspective. So it is not just a ghost, it is an evil ghost, right? Hatched his evil plan, right? And just to jump ahead, I'm just like, and what again was so evil about this plan? He led him out, not to some cave, not to a pit with spikes, right? He led him to the stream, and they worked together collaboratively, hand in glove, to catch all this fish. He didn't eat the guy, he didn't stab him, he didn't trap him. Right? He's like, oh, what he was about to. He's like, well, no, there's nothing in the story that shows him actually raising a hand to the boy. And in exchange for all this, they ended up, the villagers, of course, ended up burning him alive. Right? Wow. It's like, where is the violence originating from here? Not from the forest. Right? The violence in this story, and in many stories, is coming from the village. Right? And to connect the dots here. This ghost was like, oh my gosh, it's a ghost from the forest, burn it. This ghost was already has access to the village. The ghost is already hanging out in the backyard of one of the guys' houses, listening to their conversation. Right? So my point is, if you say, oh, he's evil, he wanted to trap him, the facts don't stand up to scrutiny. Oh, in fact, if he wanted to hurt the boy, he already has access to his backyard. He could have done so at any time. Right? Said another way, if you have a demon within you and like, oh, this demon wants to ruin my life, wants to kill me. It's like, if the demon wanted you to be dead, you would already be dead. Right? If the ghost wanted to kill the boy would already be dead. There would be no story. Of course, this demon has full access to you because the demon, mythopoetically, is a part of you. Right? Your liver, if it wants to kill you, you would already be dead. The liver has full access to your full immune, circulatory, respiratory, everything system. To switch context here, in the 7-day healing program, when we teach healing, but the main flagship program, this evil spirit in the story is what we would call the lost board member within you. It's the crux of the day 3 exercise, the crux of the whole healing process in some ways. Right? In this lost board member, when it chases you in a dream, when it breaks into your house in a dream, tries to stab you, you think it's trying to stab you. I'm like, did it actually stab you? No. Oh, this serial killer had me tied up and was sharpening his knife and smiling and saying, haha, I'm going to get you. And you were terrified. And I'm like, did he actually hurt you? And 99 times out of 100, they're like, no. Right. And so typically, not typically, always, this thing that's chasing you in a dream, in a myth, in a fairy tale, and even this is more exquisitely a thing to be described with a bit more precision, but just to wrap it all here, even in real life, the thing you think is chasing you, right, is primarily a reflection of something within you trying to engage with you. So I hold that this evil spirit in the story, its plan was not to harm you. Because if it wanted to harm you, you would already be harmed. Its plan was to try somehow to engage you. But we will never know what its intentions will be, because we burned it. Right? Once again, stupid ass villagers stuffing down these things which are trying to engage you, and we're terrified of them. We get our torches and pitchforks and we burn. The boys have an intuition to go before dawn, dip a toe, and catch a couple of fish. Right? The spirit says, no, we will go even further before dawn, deep in the middle of the night, and we will go even deeper. Right? Once you say, okay, maybe I'm ready to sort of dip a toe into this, the spirit comes up out of the forest and says, if you're ready, let's go. And you know what? Screw this. Let's do it for real. And the spirit takes you even deeper. Right? And you don't catch a couple of fish. You catch bucketfuls and bucket loads of fish. Traditionally, I mean, you see this in the spiritual traditions also. So in meditation, I mean, you've heard me talk about this when I talk about meditation. But when you're meditating just for better sleep, meditate before bed, you'll sleep better. If you're meditating for anxiety, meditate perhaps in the middle of the day, right? In the middle of what you're fighting, and it will help you calm down. However, if you are meditating for spiritual insight, the golden hour across multiple traditions is about 4 a.m. when the morning star rises. Traditionally, that is the time when, let's just call it, the veil between the visible realm and the invisible realm, between the village and the forest, is the thinnest. So that is the time when you're able to penetrate most deeply into the forest, into the realm of the invisible. When you wake up in the middle of the night and you see that it's 4 a.m., you can curse your bad luck, right? But if you know that this is golden hour, you can say, okay, the veil is thin and something roused me. This may be a time when powerful insights will come to me in the form of just straight insights or dreams or seeming nightmares, right? But you can read them. You know how to do that now. What I tend to do, obviously, given everything I've just said, is I tend to sit up and pay attention. What is coming in that needs to wake me up at 4 in the morning, right? It's probably good from my past experiences. It always ends up being good. But even if it seems like not good, even if it seems like it's scary and being chased, these are spirits or parts of me that are trying to get my attention. And so they have the power to wake me up. They have the power to mess me up. So typically, even in the middle of the dream, I'm like, all right. So congratulations, you have my attention. So what? Right, tell me, I'm here. I'm going to be, drowsy at work. Thank you very much. But again, we deal in good faith with spirits. This is the number one rule of like all fairy tale, right? Do your best to deal in good faith. So I'm dealing in good faith. Woke me up at 4 in the morning. There must be a reason. I love you. I trust you. If you're ready, would you mind effing telling me what the reason is, so we can get on with it, and I can, consider in good faith whatever request you want to make of me. And by the way, thank you for just waking me up at 4 in the morning. I know there are a million other ways you can pull the emergency brake of the train of my life, right? Car fender benders, scary things the doctor may see on an MRI, right? Certain things. Is it a mass? Is it just whatever congestion, right? That rattle my cage and get me to pay attention. Compared to all the things you could be doing to me, waking me up at 4 in the morning is nothing. Waking me up at 4 in the morning is a gift. I thank you for being so gentle. Here I am, wide awake at 4 in the morning. Speak to me. I'm here. Right? And if I'm still not getting it and you need to wake me up tomorrow morning as well, so be it. I'm here with you. Right? You're passing the ball. I keep not catching it. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for not escalating. And let me just see if I can figure it out. So this ghost finds him in the middle of the night. He leads him out into the middle of the deep, dark forest. He could have led him into a cage. You could have chopped his arms and legs off. But they actually go fishing. Not only that, they get a whole pile of fish, buckets and buckets of fish. This is not just 1 or 2 fish caught on line. This is a huge, what we call a download of insight. And even the story, editorialized and skewed by the village, they can't erase the facts of the story. The perspective of the village is that, oh, the ghost is so evil, trying to trick you, but the basic facts don't change. They got a pile of fish. The forest, they went deep into the forest. It's nighttime, 4 a.m. They got a pile of fish. And nobody trapped the boy. And the village is like, but he was going to. And it's like, prove it. Prove it. This ghost starts to eat the fish. Right? This ghost, again, is a part of you. You start to partake of the insight. Raw fish is uncooked insight. Right? It hasn't been processed. It hasn't been made more digestible. Right? It's the same fish. It has the same nutrients. The nutrients transform so my body can absorb it better after it's cooked. But when it's raw, I can react to it in multiple ways. I can react with disgust. Oh, this slimy fish is disgusting. Or fear. Oh, it's a dead fish. It's bad luck. Or even if I wanted to eat it, it'll make me sick. Right? Maybe I'll get parasites. Or I can regard it as a chef with curiosity. Oh, this is a beautiful fish. This is incredible. This is wild caught, sustainable, everything. And yeah, maybe I could eat it raw as sushi, or maybe I'll think about how I can make the fish 3 different ways, for soup and saute and all this other stuff. You can get excited. And it all depends on like how skillfully you approach these situations where life presents you with these insights. I mean, you've certainly worked for it. You walked out in the middle of the forest in the middle of the night, 4 a.m. You got this haul of fish. And at this point, your reaction is going to be revulsion or fear, right? And it's like, it mythopoetically, it makes no sense to be afraid of these things that come to you. Even though the rest of the village side is saying, burn it, right? It's bad luck, right? The act of holding space, or what we do here in sacred space, is to say, just hang on a minute. Everybody go back to your huts and just chill out. Let me like talk to this spirit alone. You can't talk to the spirit. It's like, just I'm the village head, CEO, village chief, right? I can talk to whoever I want. Go away, having a private conversation, and you talk to this ghost. So the spirit is a native of the forest. It doesn't have to cook these insights. There's a part of your body that when something hits you, even a dream, even an interaction, even listening to a talk like this, or your conscious mind may be like, yeah, I don't know. But there's a part of your body that is like, oh yeah, I get this. There's a part of your body, in other words, that is taking in the insight of even a session like this, raw, direct, and able to take in the nutrients. Like when you see a symbol, when you see a labyrinth, right? Or when you listen to a poem, I'll read a poem in a little bit. There's a part of you that, like, even before I explain the poem or the labyrinth, just seeing the pattern hits you in your body in some way, and you can't even articulate it. You know it has impacted you. Okay, and this is what to me is the symbol of the ghost eating the fish raw. And the boy sees this and gets suspicious. But you are of the night, you are of the forest, you're eating this fish raw. And I'm like, well, obviously he is. Who else could have led you this deep into the forest in the middle of the night and led you to all this insight in the first place? Right? So far in this story, nothing bad has happened. The boy's been led into the forest. They got their haul in partnership, hand in hand. And here then, the boy starts to lie and cheat. Starts to sneak away. Oh, I have to go to the bathroom. And it's like such a simple lie. After we've had all this insight, you think a lie like that is going to go undetected, right? So another way, given all the fairy tale session we've done together, even the ones where we talk about, like, especially the ones where we talk about grief, what the process of going into grief is and coming back from grief. What is the #1 rule as a villager, seemingly, dealing with the inhabitants of the forest world within you? The underworld gnomes, the dwarves, the demons, the spirits that come to you, right? The lions that chase you in your dreams, right? The storm clouds that like seemingly chase you. What's the #1 rule of how we deal with them? Right? As a reminder, the #1 rule is we act in good faith. If you don't want to make any promises, don't make any promises. But if you do make promises, you keep them. We act in good faith. So here he went out into the forest with the demon spirit. They got the fish, which is what he said he wanted, right? And then he starts to lie and cheat. So instead of saying, hey, are you really my friend or are you a ghost? Right? He just starts to sneak away. Right? I mean, so one of the ways we translate act in good faith is if you see something scary in a dream, what do I always say? I always say try and talk to it directly. But hey, you're eating the fish raw. What's up with that? Do you have a plan to trap me? Because I heard all these stories as a child saying that's why we don't go into the forest before dawn. Right? The moral of the story, fear, threat, and control is don't go into the forest. Now I'm in the forest. It's pre-dawn. and I'm here with you. We caught all these fish. Now you're eating them raw. Are you one of these spirits? And how you doing? All right, you're going to trap me. You're going to kill me. You're going to eat me. Why? Or is there something you need? Right? Is there something you need to tell me? Do you have a message for me? And if so, what is that message? And after all this fish, right, the spirit sits there and tells you the message. And it's like this whale jumps up onto the shore as well. And you take the whale home as well. A huge insight. A huge insight. Right, so translating this to like a Western perspective, in the West we say the spirit is like my demons. So I'm grappling with my demons and alcoholism and substance abuse, and and my demons are blah blah blah. Right, and they're constantly fighting with me. The classic, demons is how the classic medieval West would regard dragons. Right, Saint George and the dragon. Everyone's always slaying dragons, killing dragons, whereas when the East, in Chinese tradition, right, dragons are this mythical figure. They hold the magic, literally the magic ball, the golden pearl that the dragons were always like coveting and hoarding. But when you see a dragon, it's not like, oh my gosh, kill it. It's like, oh my gosh, it's such good luck. Can I like rub your scales for good luck? Can I give you an offer? Can I make you some food? To get you to come and hang out in the village longer because you're such good luck. We love you. Right, so very different perspective on demons and spirits. And again, the Western perspective of like, I'm grappling, I'm fighting my demons. I would say the same thing as with this forest spirit. If your demons wanted to kill you, you would already be dead. Right? And if it seems from the perspective of the village that they are torturing you, then instead of just fighting them, maybe they're torturing you, maybe they're not, maybe you're torturing you. We don't know. But at the very least, you have the right to ask these demons why. Right? To ask in the Parsifal Holy Grail, the Fisher King, the solution to that entire myth was that Parsifal had to walk into the throne room, and without being told this is what he needed to do, from his own natural instinct, he would ask the question, the healing question. And once you ask the healing question, it doesn't even need to be answered. Just the asking of the question itself instantly heals the Fisher King. The unhealable wound that even the Holy Grail could not heal is healed by the asking of this healing question. And all, the king and the land are one, and all the crops restore, villagers return to prosperity, blah, blah, blah. What is this healing question? Right? In the story written by the French bard, Chrétien de Troyes, right? Parsifal, in the year 1196, what is the healing question? The healing question to ask, Parsifal had to ask, and that I encourage you to ask, is literally, what ails the king? In other words, what is the matter here? What is going on here? And just ask before you even get the answer. Just the act of asking the question is itself healing. Or even the Holy Grail, right? The stone brought down by the neutral angels in battle between Lucifer and the angels of the God of Abraham, right? The stone, which then morphed into a cup in later tradition, that can heal anything, still cannot heal this wound. And yet, if only you ask this healing question, you can heal the wound that even the Grail cannot heal. It's very hard for us in village culture to ask, what the hell is going on? What is going on here? We're here in the forest, in the dark. You, the spirit, could have killed me, but you didn't. We caught a pile of fish, and yet here we are. The healing question is to say, what's up? Like, what is going on here? right? This demon, quote unquote, is a part of you. And let me tell you, if he is pissed at you for something, you will know. Right? He's not going to be shy about it. Every superhero story, every Marvel Avenger movie, right? The villain always has a soliloquy in the end, where the villain just like lays it out, like you hurt me when I was a boy, and I swore I would get back at you all. It's hilarious. It's like very genre sort of typical. Right? He could just shoot like every James Bond villain. He could just shoot Bond in the first 5 minutes and be done. But he has to get him up in this crazy contraption, a torture machine, and then go on and on and on about why he's doing these villainous acts. Okay, so the basic upshot of all of this is, if you feel you have a demon within you that is scary, turn around, stop running, and talk to it. Ask the questions. Right? Even holding back the bloodthirsty cheer of the villagers to say, don't talk to it, just burn it. Right? The real courage is to talk to your demons. Here, even the boy, he realizes, I can't outrun the spirit, so he stands and fights. That's one way of engaging. Another way of engaging is to talk. And as they get closer to dawn, the demon starts to lose its power because you start waking up. Right, in the regular world of fear, threat, and control. I can't think about this anymore. I've got to go to work. I've got to pick up the kids. I can't do this, whatever this spiritual reflection. I'll do it later. I'll do it later. And you stop holding space for yourself, and you get propelled through the regular world of fear, threat, and control. And needing to move faster and faster, always busy. You never have any downtime. And when you do, you evaporate. You destroy the downtime by scrolling your phone or whatever. Okay, and that's not me. That's just humanity. We all do it. I do it. Everyone does it. Right, and then when the villagers finally have the demon in their power, they burn him, which is incredibly violent and barbaric. Right? What does it mean they burn him? How does that translate into? Let's say we're in a retreat, right? And you get in touch with this very tender, seemingly demonic part of yourself that you realize is actually a very tender part of you that has been vilified. Let's say you're a daughter, right? You're a woman. And you were always told, you talk too much, you're too chatterbox. Line of your brothers talk a lot, they're captains of industry, but you're a girl, so if you talk too much, we're going to shame you. So you take the power of your voice and you stuff it down. You don't talk, you don't raise your hand in class, you don't stand up for yourself. All kinds of problems come from this. And then in a healing situation, you realize I need to recover the power of my voice. And we're in Greece or we're in Paris or wherever, we're like talking about this. We're holding sacred space. I'm holding space. We're all holding space together. And this very tender inner voice part of you comes out and starts talking to you. And you start writing note. You're crying and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to abandon you again. And then you go back into the world of the village. In the cold light of day, you make perhaps the mistake of telling your girlfriends about what you experienced in the retreat. And they're like, oh, I had something like that. Isn't that like your inner child? And it's so Jungian and it's so Freudian. And you should try this other retreat too. We'll go to this other retreat. It'll be so good. And we'll do all these substances. And the cold light of day, all this tenderness evaporates. And this experience you had with your inner power voice becomes this intellectualized skeleton of what it actually was. And you burn the ghost. You burn it. You're like, oh, haha, isn't already great on his retreat? I just feel so. But once I come back, it's like, it was just a dream, whatever. It was nice. I mean, I'll go again, but, whatever. And you burn the ghost that comes home with you. Which in this story is incredibly violent and barbaric and completely uncalled for, because you have the mirror image of what happened just 30 seconds before. Right now, the ghost is in the realm of the village. He gets burned alive. No trial, no nothing. Nobody asks him any questions. Right? What does the matter here? They just like burn him. And the exact mirror image, 3 scenes before, the boy was at the mercy of the demon in the middle of the forest realm. And what horror did the demon inflict on the boy? And the answer is, of course, nothing. In fact, they hauled in all these fish. And the fish were not even poisoned. The demon was eating them himself. He's like, yeah, you're going to eat some of this because I'm gorging. You know, it's feeding time. And in the midst of all this abundance, you pick out some little detail. Well, he didn't cook it and he's not using a knife and fork. How barbaric. And when he comes back into your realm, do you deal with him in good faith? No, you burn him. He gives you the feast as he knows to give, and you burn him alive. You burn him alive. Now, of course, thank God, reality is constructed in this way. The number of spirits in the forest is infinite. You burn, quote unquote, the spirit, you drink, you numb yourself, you spend all your time on social media, going on vacations, burying yourself in your work, and you don't hold space for this spirit in your life. You don't reflect. You burn these ghosts as they even dare to come up. There will always be more. The number of ghosts and spirits in the forest of your inner self is infinite. And this is completely given away in the scene in the story where the man realizes, I cannot outrun this spirit, and neither can you. And the, stupid ass villagers burning the spirit does not put an end to it either. Right? You can't outrun it, and if you burn it, there will be another one right behind it. Now, this is a tale told by the villagers to impose the order of the village. So after all this, they burn the spirit. Not a word is said. Yeah, they burn it, and they're like, "Yay, we did it!" And it's like, "Okay, guys, congratulations." And then they say, and the moral of the story is fear, threat, and control. Moral of the story is clearly not in sacred space. They say, never go into the forest to fish before dawn. Phew, we're glad we got out of that alive. We burned the ghost. And don't you ever, fear, threat, and control, wagging finger, don't you ever do that again. Right? Because there's this matrix of like forest, village and forest, light, daytime and nighttime. And they made the mistake of doing the double. They went into the forest, not during the day, but at night. Right? So they did the double, and they're like, never do that again. Never go into the forest before dawn. At night. That's where you run into the evil spirit, and we can't have that. So now you'll only go into the forest during the day, or even better, only fish in the village during the day, and you'll get this like whatever fake fish you get at a fast food joint. Right? It needs a lot of sauce because there's no flavor. Said another way, your world, when you look at the story allegorically, when you look at it mythopoetically, it's like, shoot, I should be talking to my spirits. When you look at it allegorically, which is the moral of the story is fear, threat, and control. What is the thing you must never do again? It tells you never go into that space again, never reflect again, never go on another retreat where these demons might be brought up. It's traumatic. And as a result, your world gets even smaller. Right? These four slices of the world, village, forest, day, night. Right? You just X'd out night and X'd out forest. You just lost half of yourself right there. We shut it out and we say, never speak of this, as if that's going to work. Right? That's the life of I mean, that's the middle management bureaucracy, the fear, threat, control realm of the village for you. Again, in 7-Day Healing, we talk about the spirit as being the lost board member. The goal in our healing method is to locate this part of us. We go into the forest not even looking for fish. We go into the forest looking for the ghost. When we find a ghost, that is the insight. It's when you're with a ghost that you get all these fish. Like the insight is we're looking for the ghost, not to burn it, but to come to reconciliation with it. That's the will of the insight. Right? And the ultimate end result is not that the forest and village merge into this like undefined lump. There is still a clear boundary between forest and village, just like there's still a door between the living room and the basement of my house. Right? These are still different parts of you. But once you reconcile them, they work in harmony. I go down into the basement to get the firewood to bring up to warm the living room. The ideal is that you approach all regions and all parts of your inner being with curiosity and openness. And what happens is when they realize you're not going to burn them, they all come gathering around. You catch a ton of fish, and you become the sovereign of your inner world. You become the king/queen of the entire inner land. Right? All of this inner conflict, fighting of the demons resolves, and what happens is you start to think about your bliss and purpose and meaning in life, and the very flavor of your life changes. Okay, so there's a poem I think I've read in this context before that really came up for me, and I'd like to read it for you in this session, in the context of this village versus forest kind of thing. So I'd like to read it, and then after that, I'll ask Gary to come back on screen, and we can have more discussion. But this is a poem by Lawrence Rabb, R-A-B. And the name of it is Sudden Appearance of a Monster at a Window. I'm just checking the time. So we still have a little time here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the full reading the way I do it, which is I'll read it once, kind of giving my little color commentary along the way. And then I'll read it again straight through, no additional commentary, so you can get the full feeling of the momentum of the poem in its proper rhythm and pacing. Okay. So this is Sudden Appearance of a Monster at a Window, Lawrence Rabb. Yes, his face really is so terrible. You cannot look away. And only that thin sheet of glass between you, clapping with his breath. So he's right there. He's looking in the window at you. And then the poem goes on. Behind him, dark scribbles of trees in the orchard, where you walked alone just an hour ago, after the storm had passed, watching water drip from gnarled branches, stepping carefully over the sodden fruit. So literally, he's in the orchard, looking in the window at you. His breath is fogging the mirror, and you realize, holy crap, I was just walking in that orchard an hour ago. He was out there. I was out there with him with no barrier between us. Said another way, he could have killed me. And you like realize with shock. Of course, you don't think the next thought, which is he could have killed me, but he didn't. He didn't even frighten me. He didn't even confront me in the orchard where he had me. He had me. Right? This is what we keep saying. It's like, if he wanted to kill you, you'd already be dead. So stop whining. Stop whining, pull yourself together, and like see what he wants. Even now, he could put his fist right through that thin sheet of glass between you, which is now clouded with his breath. But he doesn't. So it's like, hold space for yourself and him. And it's like, think, man, think, right? It's like, why is he not doing anything that I'm fantasizing that he could do? Ask the healing question here. What is actually going on here? The poem goes on. At any moment, he could put his fist right through that window. And on your side, you could grab hold of this letter opener, you know, this sharp thing to like poke him. Or even now, try very slowly to slide the revolver, the gun, out of the drawer of the desk in front of you. right? So you're gearing up for a fight. You're like, how am I going to kill? How am I going to burn him this time? Never mind that he didn't burn me when I was in the orchard. Never mind that he could put his fist through the glass right now. But he doesn't, right? How do I burn him yet again? That's all you're thinking. And the poem goes on. But none of this will happen. And not because you feel sorry for him or detect in his scarred face. And it's why is his face scarred? Who's been burning him? Who's been scarring him? Right? Obviously, it's you. Or detect in his scarred face some helplessness that shows in your own face as compassion. We'll never know what he wanted, what he might have done, since this thing of its own accord turns away. Right? So the monster sees that you're still not ready. And the monster's like, fuck. Right? You're still thinking about pulling the gun on me, even though I had you an hour ago. And the monster just turns and walks away. Like, screw it. I don't know. Maybe I'll try again later. This monster, to use the early example, this monster is, in that example, the power of your voice that you've stuffed away for so long. That scar that will make you lose love from your dad when he calls you a chatterbox and why do you talk so much? You shut yourself up and you stuff this part of you down. Right? And this is the power of your voice because this monster is very powerful. So powerful that you fear it. It's a dragon that you think, how can you slay? Instead of trying to recruit the dragon over onto your side, like Game of Thrones style, right? And the poem finishes, and because yours is a life in which such a monster cannot figure for long, you compose yourself and return to your letter about the storm. Return to your story that you're setting down on in writing about the village, the evil spirit that we burned. Haha. You compose yourself and return to your letter about the storm, how it bent the apple trees so low they dragged on the ground, ruining the harvest. Right, and this last part of the poem, and that's the end of the poem, is so poignant to me because you stuff it down again. Stuff it down again. He walks away and you stuff it down. And you're in the middle of a letter and you keep writing the letter to your friend or the outside world or whatever, telling the narrative of your life. And the narrative of your life, first of all, is a story about this storm that dragged the apple trees. And we know from the golden apple stories, we've done Loki and everything, these apple trees are the symbol of wisdom. An apple orchard is your store of wisdom. That's where you met the monster. But the storm bent the apple tree so low, the apples dragged on the ground and ruined. So you literally, this is the opposite of catching up on fish. You lost all of this wisdom. The apple trees are rotting on the ground. You cannot take them. And so you're telling the story about the storm. What you're really telling is the story about how you lost out on all this wisdom. And the wisdom you lost out on is you failed with the dragon again, the monster. And the irony is that you're doing it even as you're writing the story, because you tell the story about the apples, but you don't actually mention anything about the monster. You just completely leave it out of the history you're writing about your own life. And this monster is you. This monster is your child. This monster is your muse, your superpower. And you don't even talk about it. It's like it never happened. And as a result, you lost the apples. Right? When you tell me a story of how you've had all this hardship in your life and lost opportunity and lost wisdom and everything, I'm always listening for like the hole in the story. It's like, well, what else happened? Was there a monster? And people are shocked. They're like, well, what do you mean? So you go back to the world of prestige where monsters don't exist, or if they do, we don't talk about them, and you don't talk about them. But everything you tell in your story about your life has the fingerprints of you stuffing down the monster all over it. It's like, oh, and I lost these apples. And it's like, well, why, you know, what happened there? And you don't talk about the monster. Okay. So, okay, we're getting close to time. So I'll read this poem. So this poem obviously links back to the evil spirit in the forest, everything. And I love this poem because this poem itself is the story that the writer left out of the letter. This is the thing this poem is the thing that happens within us that we never talk about, even to ourselves. And yet this poem just lays it out and touches the jugular of what we all do, what I do to the monsters within us. And it's devastating. So I'll read it again with no more commentary. Lawrence Rabb, sudden appearance of a monster at a window. Yes, his face is so terrible, you cannot turn away. And only that thin sheet of glass between you, clouding with his breath. Behind him, the dark scribbles of trees in the orchard, where you walked alone just an hour ago, after the storm had passed, watching water drip from the gnarled branches, stepping carefully over the sodden fruit. At any moment, he could put his fist right through that window, and on your side, you could grab hold of this letter opener, or even now try very slowly to slide the revolver out of the drawer of the desk in front of you. But none of this will happen. And not because you feel sorry for him or detect in his scarred face some helplessness that shows in your own as compassion. You will never know what he wanted, what he might have done, since this thing of its own accord turns away. And because yours is a life in which such a monster cannot figure for long, you compose yourself and return to your letter about the storm, how it bent the apple trees so low they dragged on the ground, ruining the harvest. That's it. Okay, so Gary, are you there? Do you want to come on? Any additional points to add?
Hi, Artie. I have goosebumps every time, I hear that poem. I loved it the last time. I love it this time even more. And it's just, when you see it in that sense of what you do to the so-called monster, right? Like you said, like in the story, burning the ghost without even finding out what the deal is. It's so incredible.
Fish. No more fish.
Yeah, I mean, and you've lost all of that. I mean, even without thinking of the loss that it entails, it seems incredibly violent, like you said, when you see it in this form. So it makes me just wonder, what do you think? And you've seen so many people, you've advised so many people across in your programs and everything. What do you think is the instinct that makes us burn the ghost even before we've figured out what it is? Like, do we know at some level what it is, and that's why we burn it? Or do we have this instinct to burn it before we even know?
I mean, it's not even instinct, it's history. I mean, the
Right.
monster's face is scarred.
Mm-hmm.
And who scarred it?
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's nobody but you inside of you.
Yeah.
So it's battle scarred because of all the other times where you did pull the letter opener and you did pull the revolver and shoot it in the face. You thought, oh, I killed it. Yay, I'm done. I've conquered demons. Hooray. And I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
all right, okay, all right. I'm just gonna hold space for that because we're not ready. It's like maybe next year's retreat, we can try it again, you know?
Yeah.
But it's just not the time to push. It's not the time to push it.
Yeah.
But all these things are perpetrated, put it this way, like with that example of the stuffing down the power of your voice. Or for a guy, you know, the classic example is stuffing down the part of you that expresses emotion. You get hit on the football field, on the soccer field. It's like, unless your leg is bent the wrong way and hanging from like one flap of skin, you're not allowed to cry.
Yeah.
Right? You're not allowed to cry. So you get that. You know, boys are not stupid. They get that, and they don't cry.
Yeah.
Right? We've all seen it. The boy gets hit. He gets up on his own. He refuses help from his friends. He's bent over for a moment, and then he stands up straight. And while he's bent over, you can see him, quote unquote, collecting himself. What he's really doing is taking the parts of him that are like, I'm in pain, I need help, and stuffing them down. And once he's succeeded in doing that, he gets up and carries on as if nothing happened. And we, you know, I mean, there's a reason we celebrate that, because he's a boy. So in traditional societies, we send our men off to war and we require them to be competent. And if they're not, the society will typically not be in existence for very long. So there are reasons for all of this, but the mechanism is shaming.
Yeah.
Right. So you realize, I will be penalized. I will potentially lose my physical security. If as a girl, I talk too much, I don't support others when they need, I don't put the needs of others before my own, I don't people please, I could lose physical security. In some countries, my father has the right to kill me, for crying out loud. So it's not like, oh, stop being hysterical. It's like, oh, this is a human response to a very real threat. So you stuff the monster down. But then afterwards, when the threat is gone, you're a 30-year-old woman. You have a bank account. You have agency. You're like in the free world. The ghost comes back and you're like, eek, ghost, let me stuff it down again. Because you've built a world around an inner world where the ghost has no place.
Yeah. And
that may work okay for a while, but these natural parts of you, they always come back. You know, the forest within you is deep and infinite. And to me, that's a feature, a flaw.
Yeah.
But because it's when you're missing that life force within you that you've stuffed down, that you feel this wound that makes you feel, to quote the sacred text, too ill to live and yet unable to die. And to me, it is a blessing that you can't actually conquer and destroy these parts of you, because that means that once you're in that state of will to live, unable to die, there is no redemption for you.
Yeah.
And yet there is. The monster will be back, maybe next season, maybe next week. And maybe then you'll be ready to at least have a conversation. I mean, inviting it in for a cup of tea would be nice, but just not shooting it the next time, that would be fine too. That would be fine too.
Yeah. It appears to me, thank you for that, Artie. It appears to me that it's like a skill to develop where at any moment in time, you're aware of what you're stuffing down and also open to sort of renegotiate its place back at the table. And if you still choose to stuff it down, you know why you're doing it and what exactly you're losing in the process and what's the bargain. But it's a negotiation or a conversation you're always ready to have. And that in itself feels like a skill to develop, doesn't it?
Yes. I mean, I think of it as like a muscle memory kind of thing. where it's not intellectual, it actually starts over time to get into your body. That's why I started doing retreat. So with Retreat in Greece, there are people who have been to 1 or 2 retreats, have done multiple programs with me, and they're still coming to the retreat. I mean, there will be new content, but we're going to be going over things we've already, intellectually at least, right? The ideas have already been transferred. The knowledge has already been transferred. I mean, the bulk of everything I teach is already in all of these quote unquote free sacred space sessions, but telling you this is how you make a G chord on the guitar is not the same as you being able to play it. And is not the same as you being able to go from G to C versus G to A to G to F. Right. And so I think of what I teach more and more as a kind of martial art exercise, where we're teaching you the muscle memory. Right. And what you just described, it's like, oh, you know, like we should talk to it. I'm not even there. I'm just like, even to get someone to the point where when you're sitting there, you're thinking about something and your whole body tenses up. And you feel like, I need to like gear up to like run through a wall. The minute you have that feeling in your body, you are stuffing something down. You're like, no, I'm not. I'm enlightened. I'm high consciousness. It's like, well, then why is your fist in a ball if you're not hammering something down? Why is your body tight if you're not holding something in? You know, it's like, oh, it's just trauma. It's we come up with all these stories, but it's like, you know, why do you, in the poem, why do you even have a revolver in the drawer of your desk in your writing room? You're a poet, right? Why do you have a gun in your writing drawer? You know, so it's even the muscle memory to realize when I'm tightening, there's some fear, threat, and control happening somewhere. And I'm not in a sacred space anymore. That's okay. But then to ask the question, what is the matter here? What is going on? Why is my hand balled up in a fist right now? Or why is my body tight?
Thanks for that. What reflection exercise do you recommend for this session?
Okay. So let's do the exercise. And we're close to time. So we'll do the exercise, we'll close sacred space, and we will release you to the rest of your Sunday. So the exercise is, again, do this only if you want. It's no fear, threat, or control, no expectation of participation. You can treat this as a writing prompt, just like find some time alone and just write a few notes to yourself as you consider this question. And the question is, in your own life, is there a ghost that you have burned? Said another way, is there a part of you that you have thought of as shameful, evil, naughty, dangerous, wrong, and where you have stuffed it down, but then curiously found you have had to, over the course of your life, stuff it down repeatedly? Even though it comes back with yet another scar on its face, you still stuff it down. What is this part of you? And dare I ask, how is it feeling? And what does it need? And last but not least, what, if anything, would it like to tell you about you, about itself, about your life? That's it. That's it. Okay, so thank you for being here. I'll now close the session. Our next session is in a month. I'll drop the links for everyone. You can sign up now. Feel free to ask questions. If there is a session where we get enough questions actually posted, we may have a session that's just Q&A. But, you know, if people don't have questions, we'll just keep going. The next session is next month. It's free, open to the public. Feel free to invite others, and would love to see you there again as well. And now I will close our sacred space and send you forth out into the rest of your Sunday. I hereby close this session of our shared sacred space. Thank you for holding this space with me and with us. And thank you for sharing the nourishment, the emotional nourishment, and the spiritual nourishment of this shared sacred space with us. I give you my blessing. Go in peace, bestowed with blessing, free of fear, free of threat, and free of the undue control of others. Have a great Sunday, have a great week and weekend and month, and I will see you all in the next session. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.